Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. On my own behalf, this is, and on behalf of IACC, I would like to welcome all of you here for the agricultural session of the 17th Indo-US Economic Summit. Our topic today will be bouncing back on a resilient recovery part post-COVID. We have with us very eminent speakers, and I would just like to go over them. We have with us Dr. Tarun who is the director of APIDA. We have with us Mr. Vivek Chandra, who is the CEO Global Branded Business LT Foods. We have with us Mr. Pankaj Mahajan, Director Government Affairs South Asia, Kargil, India. We have Mr. Chandrasekhar Tampi, Senior Partner, Orchard and Company. And we have with us Mr. V. Lakshmi Kumaran, Managing Partner of Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan, which is a very well-known law and taxation firm. We will have Mr. Ron Verdonk, Minister Counselor for Agricultural Affairs of the US, who will join us at about a little time past 6, since he is in flight. I would like to thank all of you to be here and to speak on this very important topic. As we know, agriculture and food processing and agribusiness, as seems, has an employment of almost 50% of the people employed in India. So the importance of inclusive growth cannot take place without putting agriculture on priority. Even though we have taken many good steps in the last few years, we also need to do a lot more, and our speakers here will hopefully be able to elaborate some of the bottlenecks and other issues where a partnership with our US partners can lead to an enhancement of agricultural income. We know that India is a leading producer of fruits, vegetables, grains, seafood, milk, and lots of other foodstuffs. And where, if we are lacking in anything, it would be a value addition technology at the rural level. The US, our partner, is a large agricultural has a large agricultural base and have managed to value add at the rural levels. And it would be good to hear their experience and invite them to be part of our growth. Value addition and exports will no doubt increase the farmer incomes, and also their consumption will propel our own economy and be in line with our Honorable PM's viewpoint that $5 trillion economy in the shortest possible time can be achievable if we look at the agricultural, food processing, agribusiness industry, as a large population is economically sustained by that. I now ask Dr. Tarun Bajajji to give his views, suggestions, and as to how these objectives are already underway and some of them already achieved, and what are the future plans for APIDA vis-a-vis this sector.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll allow me to share the screen. See, you have already given introduction how important it is. One is agriculture, which is almost 60% of our population directly or indirectly linked to the agriculture. Another is processing industry, which gives employment and value addition and saves on the wastage. Third is the consumers, retail sector. It is, somebody said that it is, I think, 65 to 70 billion US dollar is our retail sector. And fourth is exports. So how important this sector it is, I think you have already mentioned, and I'm going to elaborate further on it. From India point of view, 41 billion US dollar agri exports we made last year, and we ranked 9th. So that means after feeding a large number of population in India, we are top 10, among the top 10 countries in the world. We are of course importing also. So among the top 12 countries for the import also. You have already mentioned we are blessed. A lot of, we have the strength, whether it is spices, milk, tea, cashews, rice, fresh fruits and vegetables, livestock. And we, for past 5 years, there has been a CAGR of 10% as far as processed food is concerned. And this is a sunrise industry, we call it. Why we go for processing, I think everybody knows it, but just to brush up that it saves the wastage, improves in value addition, crops diversification, and better return to the farmers. Honorable Prime Minister says we want to double the income of farmers, and this is, I think, the best way we to go for processing and then for exports also. It already mentioned brings stability in the food market, and we are able to cater to the food security needs of domestic and as well as to the all world. And at the same time, nowadays people are also talking nutritional security. This is one thing which can minimize the losses and bring the maximum benefit. So we have to go for value addition from the processing, and then we go for exports. What are the products which are being targeted or used for the processing? There, fruits and vegetables, there are pulses, groundnuts, jaggery and confectionery, cereal-based products, which we call it pasta, macaroni, papadam, milk products, atta, maida, alcoholic and non-alcoholic, other miscellaneous, which is Indian ethnic products, we call it. Livestock sector, if we see, then it is buffalo meat, sheep and poultry, dairy and honey. Let's have a look how well we are doing internationally. We are exporting 640 million US dollar of processed fruits and vegetables. Processed vegetable around 424 million, and a major market is USA, Thailand and Germany. Pulses also we are exporting, of course, in consumer packs. Groundnuts, we are one of the largest exporters in the world, 727. Of course, major importing countries are Indonesia, Vietnam and China. Guar gum in another product, we are doing well. Cocoa also, and then cereal preparations. And USA continues to be our important market. UAE, Bangladesh, UK, and our exports are 634 million US dollar. Milk products, 206. Of course, milk products consumers are our Indian ethnic population. Alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages also 330 million US dollar we are exporting, mainly, of course, to UAE and other African countries. Other miscellaneous products, I have mentioned 864, and this is a growing sector. USA and UAE continues to be an important market. Buffalo meat, we are one of the largest exporter, 3.1 billion US dollar. And importing countries, of course, are Hong Kong, Vietnam, Malaysia, Egypt, and Indonesia. Sheep and goat meat, of course, we ourselves are very big consumers, but still we managed to export 44 million, but mostly it is going to UAE. Poultry, this is another sector we should do better, but we are not able to do it because of space reason, and that is mainly bird flu. Every year we are having bird flu, and that's the issue which is affecting. Of course, government is trying to address this, 58 million, but this is mainly either eggs or egg powder. Dairy products, we are, of course, the largest producer, but we are not very good exporter, but mainly because we ourselves consume. And at the same time, we are, the procurement cost is also high, and we don't mind because in that we are paying to the farmers. So 75% of whatever is the procurement cost goes to the farmer, and mostly it is in the cooperative sector. Let's have a look of the challenges we have in agriculture sector. Our cost of production is high. We need to have volume and automation. Quality needs to be consistent, and we need consistent quantity also. Many of the field, there are yield is less. We need to increase our yield, match our international competitors. Logistic cost is very high. See, sending from Mumbai to Dubai is cheaper than sending from Uttar Pradesh to Mumbai. Of course, nowadays, even the cost of containers and international cost has also increased because of the COVID. But yes, still, this logistics is an important issue, and we are not able to have adequate cold chain infrastructure. There are market access issues we are facing with many of the countries, raising one or the other market access issues. Another thing is they are emphasizing on more and more stringent quality control and phytosanitary requirements. And we have to match it, and matching or compliance to these adds to the cost and efforts also. Traceability, though we are able to achieve traceability in many of the sectors, but still we have miles to go in this sector. I have already mentioned these are certain things, but there are opportunities also. And the opportunities are that we have the large agriculture base, plus we have the largest consumers. So what else you need? You have the largest consumer in the domestic market, and there is an opportunity to export also. We are able to develop C protocols for many of the products. Now banana, mangoes, they are going by C protocol. And we have the agriculture land, which is the second largest arable land. We have all seasons, and many of the products are matching geographical indication. You know, as per WTO, you can have GI certified products, so they give premium. India is blessed. We have many GI products. Many, as on date, we have in agriculture 130 products, but more and more are adding to the list. Government is now giving most favorable environment, and that is improving also. There are schemes also of government, Ministry of Food Processing, Ministry of Agriculture, and APIDA. They are encouraging and giving incentives and encouraging for going for exports, for value addition in the agriculture sector. And of course, the lifestyle is also changing, and the domestic needs are also improving. Domestic purchasing power and domestic requirement is also improving. So that's why you have both domestic market and huge export market in this. Way forward, we have to now look for new markets, new products. We have to now product diversification from commodities. We have to go to value addition. Health foods, after COVID, we have seen more and more demand is increasing for organic and health food. We should concentrate on that. A logistic issue, we need to address it. Of course, we are now 77, the ease of doing business. We need to improve further on that also. And there are many agencies giving benefit. We need to have a convergence, and state government role has to be very important. More important, and the most important is we need to do brand India promotion and massive promotion, which is required to be done so that people are able to identify and able to get the Indian name is there on the Indian products, because we are proud that Indian products are getting more and more popularity. We are improving in our quality and on consistent supply also, and that brand value we have to encash on this. So yes, we are, of course, there are challenges, but at the same time, there are many of the opportunities, and I think we can do well in that. With this, I conclude my thing. If any questions, you're most welcome to take it. Thank you very much.
So we thank you for your very informative and very very informative speech. We like realize that we are a large producer, and we are already making our mark in the world markets, and we have a lot of opportunity over here to grow. Most of them, what you said, were all growing industries, and we have, of course, threats that you have said, that you have also mentioned, that regarding high costs and a better infrastructure for quality and safety, etc. And I do hope that that with the help of our US partners and others, we will be able to also go beyond these things and look forward to a much larger share in the global food chain. And so we also thank you for your time here. So now I would like to call Shri Vivek Chandraji, CEO of Global Branded Business, LT Foods. Now, he is an exporter of value-added goods, and so it will be very interesting to hear what he sees as the growth path, and what are the bottlenecks that he could be facing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shri Jasmohan Singh Ji. And thank you to you and to IACC for inviting me to this panel of very distinguished speakers. I extend my greetings to them, and also my welcoming greetings to all who are on the call. I think we're discussing a very interesting topic here, and a nice stage has been set by Mr. Singh and then by Dr. Tarun Bajaj. And let me try and add to that. India is one of the agriculture powerhouses in the world. And while pandemic hurt economic growth, India's agriculture sector growth of 3.4% in 2020-21 stands out. Now, while the sector grew, the worrying trend to note is in the household income data. Income distribution and income equality have been adversely affected by the pandemic. A study by Jha and Lahoti of Azim Premji University showed that during the pandemic, household income shrunk sharply. They cite a 47% decline in the average per capita real household income in April 2020 relative to February 2020, just 2 months ago. And they further state that after 7 months, i.e. in October 2020, the average income of the bottom decile was 15 to 20% lower than the bottom decile's average income in February. It is also worth noting that the rural household income was lower than urban to start with. So the impact in rural in absolute is really a cause for concern. And thus the topic of dovetailing agriculture and food processing with post-COVID-19 growth strategy for inclusive growth is apt. And the inclusiveness is to be seen not just for the aggregate level, but how do we create opportunities for creating incomes across the farm and rural households, spanning all the income levels. Agriculture undoubtedly can play a big role in creating economic growth and in creating jobs and incomes for large numbers. As has been said, over 50% of the population is dependent on agriculture. I started this by saying that India is one of the agriculture powerhouses in the world. With agriculture production of about $375 billion, India is the second largest producer of agricultural output in the world. The total production of food grains reached a record 296 million tons in 1920, and horticulture production also reached an all-time high of 320 million tons. India is now one of the leading producers of categories like milk, rice, cereals, pulses, fruits, poultry, etc. While production has increased, domestic demand has not grown at the same pace, which is resulting in surplus. Buffer stock in cereals, for example, currently stands at about 91 million tons, which is about 2.2 times the norm. So with increases in supply, it is now getting more important to focus on demand and consumption of food being produced. And to achieve this, we will need to focus on both domestic demand, as Dr. Bajaj was talking about, but also increases in agri-exports. Domestic demand alone cannot consume the output that we are creating. And let me focus really actually on the agri-export growth as a strategy for GDP growth. India's agri-exports are sort of stuck at $35 to $40 billion levels for the last 6 to 7 years. If we are to grow our agri-exports and consequently grow farmers' incomes, 3 things I believe are going to be important. And the first of these I will talk about is market and demand-driven production systems. Today, we mainly export the surplus we generate. We will need to move from being a residual agriculture product exporter to an export market-oriented production system producer. The recent PLI scheme of the government, which incentivizes export sales rather than only capacity formation or CAPEX, is a very welcome and positive move by the government in this regard. But finding products that we have a competitive advantage in is also going to be critical. Now, finding competitive advantage may sound like motherhood, but the point I'm making is that, for example, India has over 300 GI tag products. These offer a locational competitive advantage to build on. But how many are we actually focusing on? Again, this government's district-wise cluster approach can help develop these. But again, that is from the supply side. Nobody buys what they don't want to. And so that brings me to the point of a demand-driven production system. We have to integrate demand into deciding what we grow rather than saying we will export what is left over from what we decided to grow. Second key will be cost competitiveness in the products that we choose to export. Farm productivity, high-yielding seeds, farm mechanization are some of the things that are critical to make this happen. FPOs and the envisaging that we have in the farm laws can play a major role in creating economically viable sizes where these new techniques and technologies of farm productivity can be implemented at a scale. But being cost competitive is going to be key. I was in a discussion pretty recently where the data was shared on how our mango export price was about 3 times the price of mangoes coming in from the Caribbean countries. Now, who will buy that even if it carries a GI tag? So the third point I want to underscore is the very critical point of value addition through food processing. We can sell Alfonso mangoes or basmati rice, which are all India origin recognized products. But we need to move beyond the basic commodity into branded agri-processed food. Our share in the processed food export is very low, near about 2% of the global trade. And we are missing out on the bigger chunk of the value chain. So we need to create various capacities to grow these exports. In addition to the demand responsive production capacity, we need capacities like brand building. We need marketing capacities of consumer preference need assessment. On the supply side, we need to create the infrastructure like cold chains and warehousing. We even need farm gate food processing capacity. And this can be done by the government or as a public-private partnership, creating this infrastructure because this is an economic solution. There is ROIs and money to be made. Today, wastage at farm gate is about 25%. And if only this farm gate wastage is addressed, it will lead to a substantial increase in farmers' earnings. There are further logistics and storage losses. So can we link farm economies directly to markets, which also gives the farmer a bigger control of the value chain? And we need very strong quality systems. There are different standards and guidelines, and we need to grow crops according to those. Now, the world is also getting very conscious of things that are of concern, like sustainability, health of the planet, fair trade, and we need to be incorporating those in our agriculture methods. I think governments dialoguing with the importing countries to harmonize norms and standards globally is going to be very key. And to harmonize testing methodologies and standards. We cannot have produce passing for quality in the labs in one country and failing on the same parameters in another country. We need to have a harmonized and standard method of doing these things. US is one of the largest importers of agri products from India. These points that I just raised will need cooperation and collaboration from their end to come to pass. We need to create a facilitative environment. We have issues of random and sudden changes in policies. We have issues of non-tariff barriers in, like, for example, MRLs, and we must work these in more partnership. Coming back to quality, manufacturers have to be very conscious of quality in processed foods. Processed food is not cooked but eaten directly, and we have to set the highest standards of food safety. Industry will need to invest in the required technology and processes, but it's a must. In summary, the main point that I'm making is that there are food surpluses and there are food losses as of today, all of which reduce farm income. To use these surpluses, we need to grow our position in global agri-export, particularly in food processing, supported with investment in the systems and capabilities of market orientation, demand-driven cropping patterns, infrastructure, farm productivity, cost management, and quality systems. We can unlock the value and income in agriculture, and we can come closer to the PM's vision of doubling farmers' incomes. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'm sure that in the end, I'll be happy to take them.
Sir, I thank you for your very concise and comprehensive viewpoint and speech. We do understand that there is a huge opportunity, and there are some typical bottlenecks that we have not been able to overcome maybe in the last 5 or 10 years. So therefore, value adding for the same product has not taken place at the rate as we would have liked. And that is because the infrastructure of logistics and storage and policy changes, and as you rightly say that what to grow to export, and instead of trying to export something that we are already growing and is not being consumed or is not getting a higher price. And so all these points are extremely important points, and I think some steps have certainly been taken by trying to identify one region, one product, and those schemes. And but at the same time, we must have the modern approach of marketing and trying to see exactly what is the customer looking for, what is his preference, and then coming back and making efficient export hubs where all the government subsidies and all the government help that is being given can be utilized fully, and not only by the states but by the larger export houses as well as the value adders. So I thank you, and Now, sir, we would like to call upon Shri V. Lakshmi Kumaran, Managing Partner, Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan, for his address. And so please, sir, you can take the mic anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, sir.
Again for the opportunity. The previous speakers spoke very well about the potential of the Indian agricultural market, both domestic as also the exports. Now, we also know, as far as the Indian farmers are concerned, we don't have the economies of scale of production because the lands are fragmented. It is a reality. And how do we increase the production capacities of these lands, etc., is a big question. What I was thinking is, we will talk about agri-tech ecosystems and the broader themes under which these things are functioning. Today, India has more than about 500 agri-tech startups. And this sector has a potential to grow more than 24 billion in the next 5 years. I broadly classified the agri-tech startups in the following themes: precision farming, farmer platforms, agri-credit and finance, agri-biotech, food processing, quality and traceability, and agri-infrastructure, including the storage and logistics. And we see lots and lots of investments are being made to help the farmers to do these types so that increase the yield. And as everybody mentioned, the dream of our Prime Minister to double the income of the farmers. Precision farming, in each one of them, there is how it becomes cost effective, what are the challenges. Remote sensing of the farm data is reaching the masses. And now you will see in the rural sector, the younger generation are trying to adapt these particular technologies in there. Gone are those days when a farmer has to travel or walk for more than 5-6 kilometers to go to his field for switching on the pump from his home. He is now using mobile phone to do so. He is getting the information regarding the probability of the rains and about the fertilizer to be used, when the pesticide to be used, etc. All those informations are now coming. The technology is actually helping them. And that is what is ultimately needed. Now, there are lots of agricultural platforms which have come, which like larger consumers, larger users, they are connecting. And the upstream inputs, downstream outputs, farmer platforms, evolutions, challenges, all those things are coming under this category of agriculture platforms. And now we also have agricultural credit and finances, institutional finances, as also non-institutional finances, and the challenges in financing. And you hear often down the suicide with the farmers, etc., how to address this. These are coming in between and provide those type of helping hands. Agri-biotech is a very big market, very good subject, where quality products, as Vivek was mentioning, that we should give what people want. It is not what we offer, we give to them. So biotech is one where you can actually produce high quality, consistent quality, and give to the people what they want. Of course, I don't have to tell about food processing industry. It's a very well unknown subject. I must immediately take about the taxation issue, because I am a tax lawyer, when how the agricultural sector and the taxes, how they are being working hand in hand together. I thought I will talk about this. As an income tax, agricultural income is exempt, it is not taxable. That's a very good point. And there have been some dispute regarding what is agricultural income, etc. That's a different matter. But more important thing which I wanted to mention is the tax concessions given for the industries using the agricultural inputs. And the general rates of income tax have been reduced from 30 to 15% for the new startup companies. Patent box system whereby the startups where they have the patents, they can get the concessional rate of the revenue on the revenue stream coming into that. Exemption from the fair value system of the raising capitals. Exemption from the long-term capital gain for the investment in the startups. Startup in India, no tax for first 3 years and the first 10 years of production. So these are from the income tax side, there are lots of concessions have been given. And we are seeing these concessions being properly used. Of course, the compliance level is less, but I suppose over a period of time they will get into that. When it comes to question of GST, agricultural products basically are exempt. There's no tax on this. But when they are sold in the branding in the market, they are attracting some taxes. There is a problem of higher input tax credit than the tax payable on the FinFoods, etc. That problem consists. But the interesting thing which I want all of you to know that there are issues like GST rates for roti and parota being different, and by advance ruling, etc. So these are aberrations are there. I won't say they are right decisions, but their aberrations are there. Over a period of time, it will get sorted out. Unfortunately, the Indian culinary products and the innovation made in that are not so internationally recognized. Therefore, you don't have HSM classification for these products. And therefore, you get into a problem of interpretation issues. But otherwise, this sector is sitting. But I would be suggesting that as far as the tax rates are concerned for the GST, a different model to be adopted. I think I will sit with Vivek as also with Tarun. What could be done? And Tarun was also mentioning about the challenges, especially the non-tariff barriers or the quality standards, etc., which prevent exporters from here. There, what we can do legally to handle those issues, etc., we have to discuss this. But overall, as everybody said, yes, pandemic has made us think differently. This is not the way in which we were originally doing the business. Like we were lawyers, we are working from home and then we are arguing the cases all over the world. So I would say that the agricultural sector, especially the tech sector, is helping the farmers in increasing their income. The logistics are being done. And how the platforms are actually helping them, you will see in the near future. And I see a very bright future where the agri-tech firms will be helping the farmers. I stop here because there are other speakers to speak. Thank you, Mr. Singh.
Sir, thank you very much. I think that was a very informative and modern perspective about the startups coming in and initiating the work of farmer platforms and quality control and retail brand marketing, as well as into like precision farming, which is actually ideal for small farms, and we are full of small farms. And also your very good insight on the kind of taxes that these startups will have to pay. So actually, it's a large incentive for some smart guys to come up and digitize to a point where the gaps that we have are filled up by equally interested shareholders and stakeholders. And government in this sense is on the right track, because it may not be able to do all the things where they can invite these younger entrepreneurs who are being funded by all kinds of like funding agencies to actually come and uplift the complete gaps in the infrastructure, which is actually like in a way slowing down things, and we always come to some kind of pause time to time, because we've had these the problems not afresh, but they have been there. They've been around for quite some time. At least I have seen that. So we thank you, and now we ask Mr. Chandrasekhar Tampi, senior partner at Kocher and Company, to give his address and his viewpoints on the agricultural industry and our resilient, inclusive bounce back from COVID. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Good evening, everybody, and I trust your families, your colleagues, and all of you are safe and well. The advantage of speaking after a regulator, an industry expert, and an eminent senior advocate is that I'm not going to be judged if I'm not going to say anything new. So that's how I want to start. Now, as far as agriculture is concerned, about 42.6% of the workforce in India is directly engaged in that. The number goes up to more than 50% if you add allied activities. So it's a rather large number of population involved. However, it's only in 2021, after a gap of 17 years, that the magical 20% barrier of agriculture constituting a part of the GDP was broken. So that itself shows how much of it contributes to the employment, while how little of it is a part of the GDP. Now, agriculture, of course, has been in the news on account of a number of reasons. But for me specifically, the aspect that is interesting is the fact that agricultural laws have been in focus in the last 1.5 years. Of course, just by way of background, there's been a slew of laws that regulate agriculture, the method, the product, the marketing, and even the agriculturists. So, I mean, you've got the APIDA Act, you've got the Agriculture Processed Food and Exports Cess Act, you've got actually Grading and Marking Act, which grades and marks commodities right from agar-agar to jatropa to tamarind and everything in between. Then you have laws that regulate specific products like coir, cardamom, coffee, silk, with boards to promote the marketing. Then you've got the Agricultural Loans Act. So there is a whole slew of acts, and that's also because of the peculiar structure or the arrangement that we have in the Constitution. So when the Constitution of India divides the powers, legislative powers, between the center and the state, agriculture, trade and commerce in the state, markets and fairs, all of it are in list 2 of schedule, the 7th schedule, which means that these are all subjects on which the states have the ability to legislate. Now, it's slightly interesting because over a period of time, this has become a vexatious issue. Now, while these are all within the state's ken to legislate, Article 301 of the Constitution provides a larger overarching responsibility on the central government to ensure that within the territory of India, there is freedom of trade, commerce, and intercourse. So this is how there has been a to and fro, back and forth between center-state relations with agriculture in its midst. Now, in the 60s, when the normal farmer at the local level did not have access to markets, the several states would promulgate what was called the Agriculture Product Marketing Committee Acts. And these were to ensure that there were mandis located closer to the farmers. There would be commission agents who would ensure that the supplies are provided. I mean, the markets are supplied with what the farmers get, etc., etc. But over the years, it has been observed that these acts in itself have failings, and that is where last year, first in June as ordinance, and later in September 2000 as acts, 3 legislations came into being. The first was, of course, the Essential Commodities Amendment Act, which removes existing restrictions on stocking food and produce by farmers. The Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Act, which aims at easing the restriction imposed by APMCs and allowing farmers more freedom, barrier-free trade. And the third, which is slightly more contentious, was the Farmers' Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act of 2020, which introduces what is called contract farming. Again, not a novel concept, but it's always been there. It's been discussed at length for the past 17 years, but no legislation has been put into place. And finally, a legislation was. And the fourth thing that is of interest to me also is the foreign direct investment in agriculture. I am an M&A lawyer with a background in policy. And for me, it is interesting to really understand that from 2000 to 2020, in a span of 2 years, the actual inflow of foreign direct investment into food processing and not agriculture is 2% of the entire inflow of foreign direct investment, while agriculture is way, way below. So this is where, I've heard this being a sunrise industry, and that is where there is a lot of potential, because FDI in agriculture is already as open as it can get. You've got floriculture, horticulture, agriculture, technology, plantation, all of this, the FDI is actually free, but that has not been able to attract as much of investment as it has, at least in the food and the food processing sector. Now it's a larger market, but a smaller employer of human resource. I think about 2 million people approximately working in about 40,000 registered units is what our food processing industry is. The major sectors would include dairy, meat and marine, cereals, grains, oilseed foods, non-alcoholic beverages, packaged food. So it has the potential to, I was reading a study conducted by the NCAER along with KPMG, where it has a potential of reaching about 535 billion by 2025 worldwide. Now, the weakness or rather the limitation here, however, in food processing is that unlike the developed economies or even BRIC countries like, let's say, Mexico or Brazil, or even developing countries like Mexico, India's share of value-added products, that is processed food in exports, is really low. Exports from India are dominated by high volume, low value products, which constitute about 69 to 70% of our exports. Now, while the Ministry of Food Processing is tasked with enhancing farmers' income, encouraging R&D, the act that regulates food processing is the FSS Act, the Food Safety and Standards Act. Now, while it may be said that the law insofar as agriculture, because of various reasons, including center-state relations, has not walked alongside the development in agriculture, essentially the FSS and the FSSAI, the administrative body, is more closer to the developments of the day. One of the examples that I can quote off the bat, of course, is that the FSSAI regulates food business operators, or FBOs, that is e-commerce, both inventory-based and marketplace, like Zomato, Swiggy, Grofers, Big Basket. They're all regulated by the FSI, which is interesting and which is very important, because these are standardized. It leads to standardization and it leads to increased consumer safety. So and therefore, reasons like these are the reasons why FDI in food processing is greater than the FDI in agriculture per se. Agriculture, of course, during the pandemic is a mixed bag. While the early days would have seen a 2.3 to 3% growth as opposed to industry or tertiary, but perishable agricultural goods had severe losses. The Azim Premji University found that 37% of the farmers were unable to harvest, and about 77% households consumed less food. And the CMI, the Center for Monitoring of Indian Economy, said that there's an employment fall by 22%. Of course, the most important thing here was that on account of the fact that there was a cash crunch and the closure of microfinance institutions, something that is very, very, very sad, continues the access of ready and available credit to the farmer, on account of which the usurious money lenders have increased during the lockdown. On the other hand, the food processing industry have seen something of an upturn in a qualitative manner, if not in a quantitative manner. The lockdown saw initiatives such as localization of food technology, food supply, sustainable supply chain, adoption of ICT and big data. This, of course, there was a lag. It took about 2 months, but then most of the large suppliers, as well as the medium suppliers, started using big data, ICT to improve storage, transportation, and delivery. However, in the same period, if you look at the CPI and the WPI, the price index, there's a decline, which means that the higher prices paid by the customers did not actually filter down to the farmer. Now, I mean, it's both. I mean, if you look at the picture, both agriculture as well as food processing does provide a mixed bag. And one of the reasons why this is so, in my opinion, is because of the lack of certainty in agricultural laws. Like I started off earlier by saying that in June, there were 3 ordinances introduced, and on September 27th, the bills became acts. And if you read the 3 bills together, they share a premise that will enable private players to invest in agri-food supply chains more easily, leading to gain in efficiency and downstream investment. The Promotion Facilitation Act relaxes restrictions regarding purchase of farm produce. The ECA relaxes barriers to storage, etc. So, the reason why I bring this right now is because things like contract farming, lack of restriction, the introduction of private wealth in agriculture would improve the infrastructure. One of the reasons why, despite several measures taken, FDI equity flow into agriculture, including food processing, is considerably low, is on account of the multiple challenges. We have rain-fed agriculture, lack of transparency and consistency in FDI policies, infrastructure bottlenecks. So what is intended by the government, here is to bring about an economy where the entire country is stitched as an open market for farmers, where private sector can now invest in modern agribusiness platforms, set up post-harvest facilities, cold storages, and whatnot. And this will prove, this will probably improve the conditions of farmers by giving them access to better facilities at lower charges over time. And then these reforms would create substantial investment opportunities and try to bridge the gaps that till now, in my opinion, plague the agri-investment scenario. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was a very, very informative viewpoint on the laws that we heard from Shri Kampi, and it is a matter of concern where such an important industry like food processing and agriculture and value addition is subject to so many different types of laws, and I'm sure that some of these laws are being done away with, simplified, and the more food safe, that the more laws are related to FSSA are now being used, and there is no doubt that the 3 laws that were that were brought in were aimed at increasing the value of agriculture, and this is agriculture, and not just grain agriculture or farming, but agriculture right through from top to bottom, whether it's fruit, vegetables, or seafood or poultry or anything related to the rural economy growth. And it is unfortunate that it is still lying in some gray area. And I'm sure that with the increasing demand and the sharing of thoughts of all stakeholders that this needs to be done, will find a way to resolve this out of some mathematical, political bottleneck. I mean, that's all like what I would like to say. But it's really alarming to hear the amount of laws that actually govern pretty simple, straightforward things. At this point, sir, we would like to give a very warm good evening to Mr. Ron Vedonk, Minister Counselor for Agricultural Affairs, US Embassy, who has just joined us and may have heard the last part of the address of Mr. Tampi. But prior to calling him to speak, I would like Mr. Pankaj, Director, Government Affairs, South Asia, Kargil, to give his address. At first also, that why there would be a post like Director, Government Affairs for Food Processing Unit would also be very, very interesting to hear. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. And just a quick time check, how much time do we have? Because I want to give Ron also enough time. So
we had from 5:15 till 6:20, but we started at 5:30. So we have good 15 minutes.
Okay. So I'm going to take about 7 minutes. So let me just quickly start. So good evening, everyone, and thanks to Indo-American Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to the 17th Indo-US Economic Summit and the session on agro and food processing, which is, I would say, happening at a very apt time. Though it's the last session of the day, but I do believe, agri and food sectors are no less important than the earlier ones in the context of Indo-US, economic relations. Now, COVID, as we know, has impacted us both personally as well as professionally, and even in the global ag and food supply chain, the food commodity prices have got impacted. From a macro perspective, we are seeing prices for soya, corn, and wheat to levels which haven't been seen in the last 8 to 9 years. Right, the price movement has been driven by a number of factors, including high demand from China, reopening in certain parts of the globe following the pandemic, as well as a stimulus, spending to support the economic rebound. In India, we have seen record rise in edible oil prices and the retail and food inflation. In fact, one of the speakers alluded to it. But the good part is that during the pandemic, agriculture has been the only bright spot growing in the positive territory. And in fact, in the first quarter of FY22, it has clocked the impressive growth rate of 4.5% against 3.5% during the same period in the last fiscal. Dr. Tarun Bajaj also talked about the agriculture exports, which has really done remarkably well, registering an impressive growth of 17.34% in the last fiscal. However, India's share in the global agri trade still remains small. Now, needless to mention, everyone has alluded to that agriculture plays a significant role in the socio-economic fabric of our country and is the single largest source of livelihood in India. Now, progress in agriculture affects the lives of the Indian population. Therefore, for an inclusive and sustainable growth of the country, agri and food processing have to be at the center stage. Now, several studies suggest India could eradicate hunger and malnutrition and be a major source of food for the world by striking a balance between calories and nutrition. And this is a very important point. I will allude to it at the end, with a focus on better farming practices and adoption of protein-based crops, developing railroad infrastructure and cold chains, and enhancing the food safety and the commercial and the regulatory environment, and encouraging food industry to make alternative crops worthy of consumption. Now, for agriculture to find value in current times, it needs to be linked to the food industry. And the future of jobs in agriculture sector lies not just at the farm, but on how we are able to convert the produce into food and get the food onto the plate. In other words, jobs could be created anywhere in the value chain that connects the producers with the final consumers. And that again is a very important thing. So therefore, an integrated approach to agriculture and food processing can not only be a provider of high quality, safe food for end consumption, but be a growth catalyst in our economy through employment generation, providing a flip to the agriculture industry and attracting capital. And that has been a big challenge in India, that we have been looking at agriculture and food processing as a separate whereas it should be looked as one part of one single continuum. Now there are learnings from the US agri transformation. So evolution of the farm sector in the US and its transformation to agribusiness has some significant lessons for India. Now, while the percentage of American population working in agriculture stands at less than 2%, according to the United States Department of Agriculture's Economic Research Service, and Ron will allude to it in his speech, the level of farm production has increased by nearly 50% since 1980s. And it's been largely due to advances in mechanization, increasing availability of chemical inputs, which has led to economies of scale. This has spurred rapid growth in average farm size, accompanied by an equally rapid decline in the number of farms in the US. That's how the farm consolidation can also happen in India. Learnings from the US, including solutions, have to be used as a guide map to be deployed, assessing suitability in the Indian context and the socio-economic environment. The trust-based collaboration between US and India at government and private sector level has the potential to make a significant impact in agri and food sectors in the country. Some of the areas where this collaboration has worked and will need to be reinforced include, modernizing farm economy. Indian total factor productivity growth remains below 2% per annum, and it's far below than some of the other economies, including United States, Brazil, and France. Seed technology, this has been talked about, earlier. Besides that, better storage and waste reduction, that's something, again, this has been alluded to. So as per estimates, we waste close to 40% of the food which is produced in India, which is valued around 92,000 crores per annum. And incidentally, India is home to 190 million undernourished people. So it's a shame on our part that we haven't been able to convert the agri produce into processed food and have not been able to feed the people who need it. So we are in urgent need of similar solutions to be developed for the Indian farmers, and this will not only help reduce the wastage, but feed millions. It will also stabilize prices and ensure year-long supplies. But this will also help in increasing the remuneration of farmers who will not have to do distressed sales. And one of the last points, I think, which is very critical, is that if India has to really increase its share in the world agri and food trade, we have to look at open and increased bilateral trade in the agri and food sectors, which can result in more jobs, which will result in more investments. It will expand supplies, and it will also provide choices for the consumers, right? And it can position India as a reliable and a predictable supplier and important player in the global ag and the food value chain. Now, highlighting some of the things which have been, brought up by the previous speakers. So, one of the major challenges what we see as a big ag and a food player, operating in India is in terms of consistencies in policies, right? And majority of these policies are not market oriented. Vivek highlighted that we are focused in terms of exporting our surplus rather than incentivizing the farmers to grow things which are needed by the market. So I think things around subsidies, these need to be targeted. Ideally this needs to be transferred directly to the beneficiaries rather than distorting the trade. FSS Act, if I go back, it was an amalgamation of about 7 or 8 other acts, prevention of food adulteration, etc., etc. The biggest challenge, I think, which still remains, is in terms of harmonizing it with some of the international standards. Once that happens, it will allow, import of food and food ingredients, which can be, worked upon, where the value addition can happen and then can be re-exported out of India. And we should be able to, help increase India's, share in the world trade. So I'm going to stop here because I know, we are running short of time, and I'm going to hand it back to you, the chairman, and happy to answer any questions, if any participants or speakers have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Mahajan. That was, again, extremely informative. And the fact that Cargill has to appoint a director, government affairs means that you would need to be doing a lot of lobbying and understanding the law and lots of other things, state laws, district laws, central laws. And maybe your viewpoints will be very useful for any government decision maker.
So sorry, so I did
on hand. Yes.
I didn't address that question. I didn't address that question, but the reason why we have this role is, as you rightly pointed out, being a global conglomerate, we can bring some of the global experiences and share it with the governments over here. So that's why this role becomes important. Sorry.
Okay, sir. So now we go on to Mr. Ron Vadonk, Minister Counselor for Agricultural Affairs. We thank you very much for taking time out to address us, and we are extremely eager to hear that how the Indo-US partnership in agriculture, agribusiness, and food processing, both in terms of technology, in terms of capital, in terms of buyback, and to also source things from the US, which will make things easier for us industrially. I now hand over the mic to you, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Singh. And I know following Pankaj, and I heard just a little bit the tail end of Mr. Tampi's presentation. And then I was asking myself, oh, did I come to the right seminar? Fascinating stuff. And I really love to talk about agricultural production policy, which both Mr. Tampi and then Pankaj in turn touched upon. I'm just coming from Bhubaneswar down in the southeast, and we're looking this week at rice production. So I'm actually now just arrived in Kolkata, and then on Thursday we're going to go to Raipur and look at again meet with people in the rice production business and university representatives there as well, researchers. But I got to say, when I look at the Indian agricultural landscape, we compare what we have today relative to what existed, a generation or two ago, for sure. I mean, we have to say, right, India is an agricultural success story. And I dare say, if we look at policies like the MSP, one could argue that India has been almost too successful, particularly when we focus on the two main commodities that that the MSP program really has led to, excess production, excess supply, right? Wheat and rice. I mean, right now, I think the government of India is like wondering what they're going to do with all of this mountain of grain that they have to dispose of. And so we've seen, for example, that the food subsidization program has been extended, as it was initiated last year, an extra 5 kilograms for up to 800 million Indian citizens who meet the income qualifications. And this year again, there's been an extra 5 kilograms per month. I think it's due to last until November. So that's one way to dispose of some of the commodities. But then, of course, there's been more exports. So, yeah, I mean, there's no question, some of these policies have to be revisited and revised. And I think, as Mr. Tampi was talking about a little bit, the farm laws, which were just put into law or passed into law, made effective a year or so ago, now they're all contentious. And I think there are certain certain subsectors or certain groups of farmers that are particularly opposed. But I did not hear, for example, talking to people in the rice business in Bhubaneswar, much opposition there to, you know, to the farm laws that would be implemented. But going back to the remarks that I had to kind of prepare, not knowing exactly the topics that we wanted to cover in today's session, you know, our office at the embassy, we're particularly focused on trade. Pankaj talked a little bit about that. And let me just pull those notes up. I only arrived in India, like I said, in January of this year. But when I consider the IACC and its objectives when it comes to agriculture and food, the United States and India have a robust relationship with regard to trade, investment, and technology transfer. In terms of bilateral agricultural trade in 2020, which was a down year, again, because of the virus, the business between our two countries was valued in excess of $7 billion US. As with the overall trading relationship between our two countries in agricultural and food products, India continues to enjoy a healthy trade surplus. In terms of investment and technology transfer in food processing and agriculture, there is a substantial presence of US multinationals. Again, Pankaj just spoke, representative of Cargill as he is in this sector of the economy. These companies account for billions of dollars in investments and have engaged and continue to provide significant technology transfer over the course of decades and employ hundreds of thousands of Indian workers. In this case, I'm thinking again of firms like Cargill, but also PepsiCo, Kellogg's, John Deere, among a long list of other, US multinationals. And without question, their impact has also extended to upgrading domestic supply chains here, which has benefited the Indian agro-food economy and will continue to do so going forward. And I think too, obviously by the presence of US multinationals and what they bring to the table and their contributions to, commodity production and then commodity transformation into products, this is also a benefit to Indian consumers. So I think that we would agree that the business has been good for both countries, but there's much more that we can do. There are expanded opportunities for trade in front of us, including US inputs to India's livestock and aquaculture production, for example, in the way of enhanced feed components, and in terms of certain Indian fruit production making its way to the US market. And those are just a few examples. As most, if not all of you are aware, our two countries have formally announced plans to reinitiate what we call the Trade Policy Forum, which is an avenue by which we can officially undertake negotiations to discuss broader market access in both directions. And certainly when it comes to sensitive areas of our trading relationship, as is the case for agricultural goods in general, tools like the Trade Policy Forum can be critical to opening more doors for our producers, traders, and consumers. In closing, I want to thank the IACC for inviting me to participate in this segment of this year's summit, and I hope to contribute to expanded bilateral agricultural and food product trade and investment in the course of my work here in India. And that is it. I thank you again for the invitation to participate in this afternoon's event.
And we want to thank you, Ron, for actually making our time and showing us your point of view from the side of the US, which is over the last 2 or 3 years, I would like to say that the India-US trade on agriculture has really, really improved. And particularly in things like seafood, and it has like really gone up. And it just shows that with a little bit of help, know-how, technology, the right advice, this market can grow very fast. And the benefit of this growth is going to go directly to the Indian farmers, to the Indian rural economy, and which is going to lead, which is going to play a very important factor in India's growth in the years that will come. And so we would like to thank you. We would like to thank you very much. Your being here shows that the US takes this as a very, very serious industry. Like at this point, sir, I would like to just take 2 or 3 questions from from whoever is seeing the show, or even between the people who spoke on the dais. And so we don't have that much of time. So a limited, very small, maybe two or three questions address to whoever of the dais you would like to address it to. I would wait for those questions from the audience, from the dais itself, from any other source that is watching, interested party, maybe give their name and their interest. Well, we don't have any questions, it seems, which is the thing. But I would like to say at the same time, maybe if you do have things to say or anything, please do write to IACC, and they will surely, take it to the right place. And I would like to thank all that have come and shared this dais and given their views. And I do hope that IACC will take this, all the points that they have made, to the right places so that they are heard. And I would once again thank IACC. I would thank the US Embassy, that and all our sponsors that to have allowed this conversation to take place. And I'm sure this will have some sort of bearing, some sort of value. And when we come again next year, then we can easily review as to where we were stuck last year, and how many of those bottlenecks are off, and how much we have grown. And for that, I would like to thank you all. Once again, I would like to thank Neelu of IACC, who's done a very good job in making this